So obviously, as we know, over the weekend, there was the response from Iran and conversations that Joe Biden is having with Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister of Israel. The world is waiting to see what or if there will be any response. Joe Biden, as far as the United States is concerned, has asked Israel to stand down. To have a conversation about this, we have Aviv Bushinsky, former media advisor and chief of staff for Prime Minister Netanyahu. Mr. Bushinsky, good morning. How are you? Or afternoon, where you are.
I personally would prefer to continue the previous conversation talking about sports, but unfortunately we're facing some more fundamental issues.
Well, look, sports is one of those, you know, it should be apolitical, but sometimes it does get political. But sports kind of is probably a little better these days to talk about. But just to make sure, is it the time where you are? Is it afternoon, morning, evening? Just to be sure.
Now it's 2:30 p.m. Local time.
Got it. So let me just start here. As I said, you know, we knew we saw Iran's response over the weekend. What is the mood currently in Israel?
Actually, it's a huge dilemma because we all remember, unfortunately, the horrific event on October 7th. And most Israelis think that the fact that the Hamas launched this vicious attack on Israel was an outcome of lack of deterrence. That we all thought, the Israelis, that the Hamas as a terrorist organization is being deterred and they won't dare doing anything like that. And unfortunately, we were caught in surprise. So after the Iranian attack, which happened this weekend, the major question is, okay, since we lost our deterration, there is no alternative but to retaliate, that Israel should hit Iran as a result of what happened. This is one thing. And of course, the second issue is that no sovereign country would accept the fact that another country is hitting you and you sit still, not doing anything. And, you know, since I think 1973, or in one segment during the Gulf War, Israel was not attacked by a sovereign country. It was attacked by different terrorist organizations like the Hezbollah, Hamas, Islamic Jihad, etc. But in the last 30 years or so, there's no precedent. So these are the two major factors. First of all, we have to retaliate because we were attacked by a sovereign country. The second is, if we will not do so, our enemies will see Israel as a very vulnerable country that everyone can hit Israel and will just sit still.
To that point, it was on yesterday, I believe, the Israeli War Cabinet actually convened for a meeting, and that is one of the things that was discussed, how, they actually came out and said that they would move forward with an attack on Iran, but they didn't actually specify what that is, and I guess it would make sense not to forecast whatever the response would be. But do you think there is a possibility, if there is an attack and Israel doesn't stand down, do you think that that would be an attack on Iran's soil?
So no doubt it should be on Iran's soil, because this is the way, unfortunately, the rules of the game. I can use this termination. But Malik, you led us to another dilemma. First of all, the Israelis don't want another escalation. We don't need another front. We have enough fronts to cope with. The northern front with the Hezbollah, the southern front with the Hamas, the Judea and Samaria with the different Palestinian organizations. So we are not fetching for another big ordeal in another soil. This is one thing. The second thing, the Israelis really fully appreciate the fact that the allies led by the United States are backing Israel since what happened from Iran. So one dilemma, okay, we'll do it and we'll be preoccupied with other issues. We will not do it, and we will do it too vigorously. It will lead to maybe a real Middle East turmoil, and who knows what will be the end. And the third thing is we'll do something that especially the United States will not be fully supportive or will be upset that Israel is doing something that is too extreme. We lose the support of the United States and others. So Israel, on the one hand, it's very easy to talk about doing something to the Iranians, but the other question is to what extent, to what scale. So what we are talking about here in Israel, that we'll do something mediocre, we will not go to the extreme. But then others say, okay, if you do something that is so-so or mediocre, maybe it's better not to do anything because our enemy will think that we are incapable of doing something substantial. So there are tons of dilemmas, but if you're asking me, the bottom line that Israel would have to do something, but it will be very limited.
And let me also ask you, just to follow up to that, and obviously, not speaking for, I'm not expecting you to speak for Netanyahu in this case, but if you were to get into his mind just a bit, I can imagine, or if you could just talk about the dilemma that he faces as the prime minister. On the one hand, I'm looking at it from a U.S. perspective. If something happened here for instance, an attack here in the United States, obviously many Americans would want the United States to respond. What scale of a response actually is questionable, but Netanyahu is navigating not just that reality that Israelis would want a response, but also that the eyes of the global world are on Israel. Just checking, waiting to see what that response to be. And so to your point, for some people, it could be seen as a sign of weakness if there isn't a muscular response. But at the same time, if you could get into maybe a pragmatic choice that a leader, it's much different, me as a commentator or, even you as a spokesperson for that matter, what a leader has to weigh and whether it's seen as pragmatic or otherwise, but just what a leader like Netanyahu has to weigh in these moments.
So I guess, Malik, this is the reason why you and I didn't pick this job, because I think this is the most complicated job. And I think as a politician or a leader, maybe to be an Israeli leader, I think it is the most challenging job on earth. I don't see any country that has so many issues to tackle in one shot. Bearing in mind that we're having 133 hostages still in captivity in Gaza. And for most Israelis, this is the most important thing, trying to release them and trying to eliminate the armament capability of the Hamas. So some say, okay, let's not be derailed by other issues as much important they are. But going back to Netanyahu, and as you mentioned, I worked for Netanyahu for many years. When Netanyahu was just deputy foreign minister, and I'm talking about 1991, when the Desert Storm operation was conducted by the United States and the Iraqis launched missiles towards Israel, Netanyahu at that time said, Israel cannot sit still. If the Jewish land is being attacked, we need to retaliate. At that time, our prime minister decided to sit still and not to do anything, maybe respecting the request of the American administration. Nowadays, Netanyahu sees the Iranians as the mothers of all evils. They are funding the Hezbollah, they are helping the Hamas, they are funding all the terrorist organizations, and above all, developing their nuclear capability. I think that Netanyahu is quite upset that the Western world does not adhere to his request to try and do something more substantial towards Iran. So maybe if I put all those ingredients together, maybe Netanyahu will ask the American administrations and other leaders to unite and do something more tangible towards Iran. This is one thing. And the second, if you're talking about strategic or about some army operations, in Israel, some people talk about maybe doing some kind of a cyber attack or at least harm the Iranian Ayatollah's regime, hoping that the people in Iran will understand and will agree that this is not the ultimate leadership one should be accept.